How can a single moment change a life? By definition, life-changing means to have an effect on someone that is strong enough to change their life, and having a powerful effect on something. When I think of life-changing, a couple of things come to mind. The first is my crazy Labradoodle puppy Lucy, who likes to eat rocks, and don't worry, she doesn't swallow them, she just likes to chew on them. Even though she may get into everything, I still love her to death. We instantly became best friends, and we went from there. The next moment will be getting to letter my freshman year and wanting to stay with now some of my other best friends. Getting to be a part of a team and being with the same people for at least 3 months will change you for the better, sometimes the worse, but mostly for the better. Now me and 6 of my other crazy best friends are going for a 3-peat title this year, but that's not what this video is about. In the book 102 Minutes by Jim Dwyer and Kevin Flynn, there is one character by the name of Brian Clark who applies to the theme. Brian Clark is a Eurobroker worker who works on the 84th floor of the South Tower. Once the evacuation of the South Tower began, a man named Stanley Primneth, who worked on the 81st floor for the Fuji Office Bank, was trapped with no one aware of the incident. Brian Clark had begun his evacuation with few of his other colleagues down stairwell A, when a voice broke out claiming that they needed help. Clark and DeFrancisco, a worker of the Eurobroker group, decided to go and help the person. Dwyer and Flynn illustrate. At that moment, another sound came into the stairwell. A voice called out, "Help! Help! I'm buried! Is anybody there?" Clark turned to DeFrancisco, put a hand on the shoulder. "Come on, Ron," Clark said. "We've got to go get this guy." This ties into the essential question changing a single moment in someone's life, because Clark and DeFrancisco could have easily left and tried to continue to evacuate, but instead, they risked their own lives to go and free someone's life who was in danger. The two men clawed through the rubble and tried to be able to see who the human was that was trapped, when DeFrancisco decided to abort the operation, claiming that he couldn't breathe. The text claims, Clark and DeFrancisco were on one side of a wall of ruined doors, desks, and drop ceilings. DeFrancisco held his backpack over his face and tried to breathe through it. Unable to get any decent air, DeFrancisco backed out onto the floor into the stairwell. He then decided to go join the group, escorting the heavy-set woman. This piece of evidence is describing how Clark is alone, trying to do what seemed impossible. He could have easily given up at this point and tried to find an escape route for himself, but no, Clark does the opposite. Both Primneth and Clark began to dig at the rubble to free Primneth. Finally, they got to a point where there was no use in digging anymore. Dwyer and Flynn continue with, "You must jump," Clark said. "It's the only way. You've got to jump out of there." On Primneth's first effort, he did not reach Clark. The next try, Clark grabbed him and heaved him across the barrier, and they fell onto the ground hugging. The last piece of evidence is displaying that both men are now successful in their tasks at hand. Clark saved Primneth, which is life-changing because he won't have the conscience of what if. In all 3 of these pieces of text, we see that a single moment not only changed the life of Stanley Primneth, but Brian Clark too. Because of the rescue attempt, both Clark and Primneth were able to continue the evacuation of the building, but continued to go down the stairs. The single moment that was life-changing was saving Stanley, and because of his rescue, both men were able to make it out of the South Tower on that tragic day. The book Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck is relevant to the theme of how a single moment changes a life through the 2 main characters, George and Lenny. In the book, we see 2 best friends who are trying to find work. We can see that George is the smarter one of the 2, with a short temper, while Lenny is simple, but tries to see the good in people. Throughout the story, George's character evolves to become a father-like figure to Lenny. George does end up changing throughout the duration of the book. In the beginning, we see he uses harsh words towards Lenny, so he doesn't screw anything up. But then, at the ranch, George uses a type of kindness so that Lenny doesn't get bullied by any of the other guys. Steinbeck writes, George said, "His name's Lenny Small." The boss pointed a playful finger at Lenny. "He ain't much of a talker, is he?" "No, he ain't, but he sure as hell is an awful good worker. Strong as a bull." Lenny smiled to himself. "Strong as a bull," he repeated. George scowled at him, and Lenny dropped his head in shame of having forgotten. Steinbeck 21-22. This quote is supporting an argument on how your character and you treat someone can partake in life-changing events. In this instance, George is the father-like figure to Lenny. If George hadn't stuck with Lenny, Lenny wouldn't be where he is at this point in the book. George has prevented Lenny and told him not to say anything, because by him talking could be the factor of whether they get the job and stay at the ranch or not. Even though George is harsh on Lenny, we see that later he admits his true feelings about Lenny. Steinbeck quotes, "Of course Lenny's a goddamn nuisance most of the time," said George, "but you get used to going around with a guy and you can't get rid of him." Steinbeck 41. This quote is exemplifying how George feels about Lenny, and even though his characteristics make him very annoying and hard to deal with, George still sticks around with him and uses that father-like characteristic to help and support him. It also shows how a tough guy like George does indeed have a soft spot for a guy like Lenny. Towards the end of the book, we see that George's character changes, and he starts allowing people to tell him what to do. It is mentioned that George needs to send Lenny to a better place once Lenny accidentally murders Curly's wife. George does in fact end up what some might call kill his best friend, but in a gentle, fatherly-like manner. Steinbeck takes us through it with this. No, Lenny, I ain't mad. I've never been mad. And I ain't now. That's the thing I want you to know. George raised the gun and listened to the voices. Lenny begged, let's do it now. Let's get to that place now. And George raised the gun and steadied it. And he brought the muzzle of it close to the back of Lenny's head. The hand shook violently, but his face set and his hand steadied. He pulled the trigger. Steinbeck 106. This ties into the theme of how a single moment can change someone's life through characteristics, because it is a single moment that changed Lenny's life was when Curly's wife was murdered. Because of it, he ended up dying. The moment that changed George's life was when his dumb best friend got scared and murdered Curly's wife. What changed his life was when he was faced with the decision of getting either out of the ranch and not having a place to stay anymore, or killing his best friend who had run off. George chose option B. When you are faced upon difficult decisions that affect your characteristics, they can end up changing your life. George lost his best friend, and Lenny lost his life because of it. The poem Solitude by Ella Wheeler Wilcox provides an insight to the theme. The poem focuses on little increments that can occur throughout one's life, and how people can be there for you one day and gone the next. Wilcox writes, "Laugh and the world laughs with you. Weep and you weep alone." The author's work ties back into the theme because the author is providing a correlation between two events. One is good and the next is not. We can infer that an event has taken place in order for the bad one to occur. What this quote provides is that you can be happy and laughing one day, but then something bad happens the next, and you're now sad, alone, and crying. Those people that were there for you seem to have disappeared. Wilcox continues with more examples like this by saying, "Rejoice, and men will seek you. Grieve, and they turn and go." What this quote is providing is that if you rejoice and celebrate something, people will want to be with you and celebrate the good accomplishment. But when something else happens, particularly bad, they won't be there for you anymore. A single moment happened and affected the result of something. People are there for you through the good times, but not the bad times. Finally, Wilcox continues with, "Be glad, and your friends are there. Be sad, and you lose them all." Again, this piece of textual evidence is supplying the reader that can be happy and alive in one moment with some people that you enjoy being with, but then they are not there through the sad and hard times. Wilcox provides details over how a good happy thing can occur, and you'll be loved, but once a bad thing happens, it seems as if you're alone, and that single moment did change. We all know about the James Charles and Tati drama. Both are known for their millions of followers for their makeup talents. Tati was the one who gave James his name. At the popular music festival Coachella, James said that he felt unsafe in the crowd, and Sugar Bear Hair Products security team helped him get to a safe location. He thanked the company and the security team by promoting the company's product to his 15.2 million Instagram followers. Tati then became infuriated. Tati has a brand called Halo Beauty and is a direct competitor with Sugar Bear Hair. She then posted to her Instagram story to her 3 million followers complaining. Although that story went viral, a lot of people saw it but didn't think much of it. Last Friday, Tati responded with a 43-minute video entitled Bye Sisters, explaining her side of the story and all the events that happened that claim that James has done some inhumane things over the course of his career. James responded to both of the videos with an 8-minute apology. It is evident that James was trying to have a pity party and get people to side with him. Fans are now believing Tati's side of the story. James has lost 3+ million of his 16 million followers on YouTube, while Tati is gaining many. This ties into the theme because James promoted a company that was competing with one of his best friend's brand, and even with that, his whole world was upside down when someone who knew all of his inside information was spread for the whole world to hear. Yes, a single moment can alter and impact your life. It can either damage your life for the greater or worse. Everything that you decide on will ultimately change your life. All of these choices can have a powerful effect on you and your characteristics that define who you are.